take long either.
No, I've got, minimal.
We're on there.
1 minute.
Just,
There we go.
he's got us on, but, yeah,
Okay.
just be mindful.
State representative.
5:30, we'll call this meeting to order. Rhonda, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Temple.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Kirsten West. Dr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. McLean.
Here.
Mrs. Wonkum.
Here.
And Mr. Still.
Here.
Thank you. Executive closed session per North Little Rock School District Policy 1.14A, stating that private or closed discussions by the board may occur as part of a regular or special board meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment if requested by parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public session and presents the item for vote of the membership. Further, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106 2C states that the specific purpose of executive session should be announced in public before going into executive session. So will you please join me in executive session to discuss the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of an employee.
Ravens and Cincinnati.
Okay, we're on.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay. So we have no public comments tonight. We can move on to action items.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the first action item is 5.1, the employment of personnel. The superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam President, I move that we accept the employment of personnel as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. The next action item is 5.2, the Classified Personnel Policy Committee Report. This is based on the FY25 non-licensed personal salary schedule update. And I will welcome Ms. Cherry, the chair of the CPPC. Welcome, Ms. Cherry.
Is this close enough, or?
Yes, ma'am. Just make sure just to speak in the mic.
Good evening, everyone. As he said, my name is Ms. Cherry. I'm currently chair of the CPPC. On October 17th, the board approved a proposal to update the fiscal year 25 non-licensed professional salary schedule. The proposed update is to change the non-licensed professional salary schedule range 5 title from non-licensed CFO/CIO to just chief. The change in the salary schedule would accommodate a reorganization of the currently vacant.
Poor Ms. Cherry. Mr. Reynolds is in and out.
The currently vacant executive director of student-centered services to a chief of staff position. On Wednesday, October 23rd, the CPPC held a special meeting at which Dr. Paluski was present. Dr. Paluski discussed the current state of the district hierarchy and staff responsibilities within the district's organizational operations. He presented his rationale for the creation of a chief of staff position and its responsibilities. During the meeting, members of the committee had the opportunity to discuss different aspects of the proposed staff reorganization. After the meeting, the committee submitted a list of remaining questions to the superintendent and subsequently received his responses. The committee reviewed the job descriptions for the executive director of student-centered services and the deputy superintendent to develop an understanding of the responsibilities that would transfer to the reorganized chief of staff position. Salary schedules for the licensed and classified positions were also examined to obtain an understanding of what the minimal fiscal impact would be, as was stated in the yellow sheet proposal. On Monday, November 4th, the CPPC held a special meeting. 8 of the 10 CPPC members were present. During that meeting, concerns were expressed regarding the large scope of responsibilities that are included in the job description and the minimal qualification being a master's degree with no requirement for experience in education. At the end of the meeting, the proposal was put to a vote. With a vote of 6-2, the board's proposal of a fiscal year 25 non-licensed professional salary schedule update was accepted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cherry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Madam President, the next action item is 5.3, FY25 non-licensed professional salary schedule update, and I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Question. 5.2 is considered an action item to vote on. What are we voting on?
We accept the minutes. Is that what?
Because it's an action item, as though we have to vote
Yep.
on something.
So probably what we should have done, and I'll defer to my colleague, Mr. Smith, because the licensed professional salary schedule does have to go before CPPC, they do have the right and the authority to come to the board in order to talk to the board about how they voted. And so we wanted to make sure that we abided by that. I would ask for a clarifying about
That is correct, under the new LEARNS law. So if the board will recall, prior to LEARNS, there was the requirement if a change was done mid-year, there would have to be a vote done by the staff, whether it was a bonus anything of that nature, or a change in a salary schedule or something that would have a resounding effect such as that. Now the PPCs are the individuals that function in that capacity. There is no longer under LEARNS a requirement to send out for a staff-wide vote. And so you bring it to the CPPC or the LPPC, depending on which one it falls in. If it is approved, then it is able to be immediately enacted by the board.
So
the vote
So
is,
to accept the CPPC's report.
Madam
Is that
Chair,
fair, Mr.?
That's fair.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we accept the, is it the
CPPCs.
report that was given?
Second.
Okay, moving properly second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the clarity. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, for the record, my name is Greg Paluski, the proud superintendent of the North Little Rock School District, and I'm here before you, or action item, which is 5.3. The superintendent recommends FY25 non-licensed professional salary schedule update that as presented to you in the last board meeting, as well as here this evening, and happy to answer any questions that you have, or comments, or anything that, any questions you have regarding the change, proposed change.
First question,
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Madam President and Dr. Paluski.
Yes, ma'am.
The only problem that I had with your report, when you made it last week, I should have contacted you. You said that you controlled 17 people in the school board. And I know that had to be a typical error because people started calling. And I wanted those persons to understand that we as board members know our role of what we do. And that role is the North Rock Board of Education nor ever have been controlled by a superintendent. The policy section 1, it governs and operates the powers and duty of the board. The board elects and employs the superintendent and gives that person support that he has needed. And that says we as a board, we know that we have provided services that the superintendent has asked us to do to enhance our district. And it's not about a controlling factor. It is simply building. I know that we have hired 45 people with 245 days. I know that he's implemented safety for our students as well as our staff. The board is aware of it. But saying to you, because the text, it was just simple, that little word that you had in there, Dr. P, where you were making your statement about your hiring, that you said you control 17 people.
Yes. Can I
That's
clarify?
13 the board, and I was just clearing that
Sure.
up.
Okay.
That is not what you see because it is not true as a reflection on the board.
Well,
So-
can I clarify just that?
Sure.
What he's saying, what he was saying in that is that he gets phone calls from us, all of us, all the time. He has to communicate with us all the time. So directly, he has to deal with us as a ongoing daily course of business. So when he's dealing with all the people he has to supervise, he's not saying he supervises us, but we directly contact him for everything.
I would
So
say we have no.
Yeah, so it's
dealing with
not-
that.
yeah.
The word control should have been eliminated. That was all.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Sure.
I expressed our role as a board that he does not control the board. Anything that we do here is for the education of our children. Thank you.
So-
that is true.
So it's a great point, Ms. Williams, and I appreciate that. Obviously, the term span of control is an organizational term, and basically, just to clarify the public, there's no delineation that the superintendent is controlling the board. You are an entity of a body, and what I was simply saying as an organizational framework is that in school districts, board members are considered direct reports to the superintendent, meaning in the span of control of the individuals that they work with on a regular basis, they are included in those individuals that not only my direct reports that I work with every single day, but also I have individual 7 with each of you which is why we do our individual one-on-one reports, or if I have phone calls, any of those things, that's where that's coming from. It is not, it is more of an organizational term, just to clarify.
Thank you. You expressed yourself very
Thank you.
well.
Thank you.
And I think I did too.
Of
Thank
course you
very
did.
much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We can move on.
Question.
Sure.
On the organizational chart, I had time to go over this, and another question I have on the job description.
Sure.
One, I was looking and did not see the full chart. It's just the top level. Is that because nothing changes on the full organizational chart?
No, that had been that was posted in executive content. I have that here, and I believe that Ms. Colquitt is going to post that to the public. But you do have access to that. That was communicated with you yesterday at the request. I believe Ms. Williams was the one that asked for an updated organizational chart, and you were communicated with that information. So it is here. There's an updated one.
Mr. Steele,
Right.
if you scroll all the way down,
in your
you'll
executive
see
content.
the PDF, the
Must go back to
revised
the
one.
front.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay,
so
let me ask a
what
question here.
Ms. Colquitt has, or what Mr. Riddle has up, is just showing the operational side of the house. And so you have to take that into consideration of the bigger, larger organizational picture. I might need that back. But I memorized it. I got it memorized. And I think, there you go. I think Ms. Colquitt's going to post the most updated one that I had provided to.
She did.
Yeah.
She posted it. You just
Ah.
have to scroll down.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I see this. I think it answers my question, but then I
Yes, sir.
see the difference that
Right. So
needs to be
if-
answered now, and that's about the deputy superintendent.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So if you look at that
It's not
updated,
on this.
correct. That's only showing the operational side of the house. So if you flip to the front, which is what traditionally that we have done in North Little Rock, is we've sprinkled operations. There you go. So we've sprinkled up. Yeah, there you go. So what traditionally has happened, and upon arrival, one of the first things in looking at our organizational chart that I've always envisioned is an operational side of the house and the instructional side of the house. So for an example, right now, Mr. Smith in his Department of HR, because we've had to move some things around after the Executive Director of Student Center Services resigned. So what this shows you on the left side is that Mr. Smith in his department of 6, but he also has temporarily food services, he also has transportation, and he also has information technology. So those are operational sides of the house, and if you look at that, they're very large departments within our organization. The same thing you'll see with Mr. Brown currently has facilities. He has Mr. Ward as well as Ms. Martin. Which is on the operational side of the house, and I'll jump instruction here for a second. And then you see Chief Finks, which is our Director of Safety Services. Again, each one of these needs to be blown out a little bit further, but it does give you a larger kind of view of what's under the operations side. And then you have the Coordinator of Communications. So what the proposal is to take the operations sides of the district and move them over into one side under the Chief of Staff. At the same time, that on the other side, which is under Dr. Hooper, is the deputy superintendent, that is the instructional side of the house. So anything that's highlighted in a larger green box are direct reports that you can see by that. And then what I tried to show you is underneath those individuals that are supervised, that next level. And so if this is approved, what I would do, Mr. Steele, is I would come back and blow that out even further. That would show the operations side of the house and the instructional side of the house.
Okay.
And then I would drill that down even further by department. And so that's what was in it. If you look actually in the chart that you have in front of you, Mr. Steele, if you flip all the way to the back, that is the one that we started the school year with. And if you look at that one, if you go all the way to the right, you'll see underneath my direct reports, which are in blue. For an example, you'll see Chief Finks. It just says Hayward Finks, but it doesn't have anything underneath him.
And this will be both combined operation and academic.
Well, that's where we started the school year. So you'll see down at the bottom, that was revised the school year. So what you have in front of you on the first page is a revised that was requested as of November the 1st. This is how we currently, as of today, organizationally stand. And so the proposal is to take all the operations, which is the second sheet that you have, that is sprinkled throughout all these different departments, and put them on one side of the house. And that would report directly to the Chief of Staff. That's the operations side. Then it would be the instructional side, which is under Dr. Hooper. That would all remain the same. So under the superintendent, that would have 7 school board members that we consider reporting to Ms. Colquitt, and then it would be the Chief of Staff, and the Deputy Superintendent would be directly reports to me. So in my span, not to use that word organizationally, but in my areas of those that I directly work with the most, I'm only going from 13 to 10. So I still have 10 individuals that I'm working with closely. Does that help, Mr. Steele, in trying to understand?
It does. I'm still, so how does the new organizational chart, what I got from you, what are the major differences than the chart that we started the school year with, other than the Chief of Staff?
Yeah, well, there are major ones to go back and to really look at from the first one to the second one. But the first and primary one are all the individuals that are directly reporting to me. And so probably the best way to describe this to you would be to take this organizational chart that you have in front of you, take everybody off it except the deputy superintendent and her roles and responsibilities. Just imagine that. And if you flip the next page,
then that would be operations.
No, that's the instruction side of the house. So everything.
If you take the deputy,
right? So what? No. So what I'm saying, if you looked at this organizational chart and you took everything off it except the deputy superintendent,
I got you.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then imagine everything is gone except the deputy superintendent. Mm-hmm. And then if you flip the page, then you have the operations side of the house. Because when you look at all the functions that we currently exist that have been divided, what we're simply doing is putting all the operations under one side of the house and keeping all the instructional side on that side of the house.
Angela.
I'm trying to.
Go ahead. I don't got another question.
I got you can go ahead with your question since you're on the floor.
Sure. So, I'll continue to explain this. So, when you think in the proposal of the Chief of Staff, so when you look at that second page, who reports to the Chief of Staff in the new reorganization role? That would be the Executive Director of HR. Mr. Smith would be a direct report to the Chief of Staff. If you look well, there you go. These are all now right now, again, all these functions are spread out. So for an example, you have Mr. Smith, the Chief Executive Director of HR, and his responsibilities that you see. You have Mr. Brown, that is the CFO. Mr. Brown currently is also supervising maintenance, and he is also currently supervising custodial services. That would come out underneath Mr. Brown and go under the Chief of Staff. Chief Finks, the Director of Safety Services, that remains the same. Mr. Barnes, the Coordinator of Communication, which has the 2 specialists. Right now, the Director of Food Services, Miss Mary Lee, thank you. That currently reports to Mr. Smith. That would come out from underneath Mr. Smith, and that would report to the Chief of Staff. The Director of Transportation currently reports to Mr. Smith. That would come out from underneath Mr. Smith and report to the Chief of Staff. The Supervisor of Custodians, which is Ms. Martin, reports to currently the CFO. That would remove from the CFO, report to the Chief of Staff. Mr. Riddle is the Director of Information Technology, currently reports to Mr. Smith. That would come out underneath Mr. Smith and report to the Chief of Staff. And that would be all the operations side of the house. Yes, ma'am.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, ma'am.
What I was concerned about, correct me please, I was reading in here, you know, you say you would make this job, what was that job, student services, that you would not be hiring, it's reorganization.
Yes, ma'am.
This person here, chief of staff, will be doing that.
No, ma'am. No. Can we go back?
Huh?
Well, partly. Let me go back. Let me go
Okay.
back. So, under the executive director of student-centered services, they had student services, and I'm going to put that aside for a second.
Okay.
I'm going to show you where that is.
Okay.
Also, within that function included nutrition, transportation, and maintenance under that old position. That's where those lived, as well as the student-centered side. So, Ms. Colquitt, if you will go to the other side, the other updated organizational chart. If you look under Dr. Stoll, you will see that she has special education services. She currently has the 4 principals, but underneath that is the coordinator of student-centered services. That's Ms. Randall. And Ms. Randall is the one that's been doing all the work as it relates to ALE, enrollment, everything that she conducts, our change of placement, all of that is in her responsibility. And right now, that's currently under Dr. Stoll. She's doing a great job.
Okay, I heard about the great job. I guess all of them are doing great jobs, but the question I have to ask you, would this not have to be reorganized? Because when I think the director of student services, and you, as you say, you combining that up there, and that person is over student services, they have to deal with every aspect of anything that's going on in the district about a student, as far as our policies. So you're saying you're going to divide these jobs up. I know what Ms. Randall is doing, okay? Mm-hmm. So, but you mentioned in your report that you are reorganizing it. This person now would be responsible for that job. Is that correct?
Which person, Ms. Williams?
The director of student services.
Well, there is no more executive director of student-centered services. That is the position that is that position goes away, and then the chief of staff position is the reorganized position. So this is not a new position, it's a reorganized position.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
We're on the same page, but I was just asking you with that change, if that person has all those jobs that you showed us that person would be over, I was just asking how cumbersome, knowing that your job by itself was so much, unless you're also reorganizing that, we'll have to see another organizational chart where some of these things are spread out, because I really don't like just looking at this and this other person haven't been a part of this chart. So this is something we'll have to discuss, because my comprehension level is good, but I do know student services, that was a job by itself, but then you are creating this job, chief of staff, and I see 7 things that they already will have to do, plus being over student services. That was my concern, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And yes, ma'am. In the chief of staff role, they're not a part of student-centered services. That would be on the instructional side of the house where it should be.
Instructional side.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, you're taking that job, and the main core of that's going into the curriculum side and the coordinator of student-centered services.
Well, in the student-centered services side,
Yes,
that's right.
yes.
But remember, also
But
a part of that job.
also had
Right. If you remember when
maintenance
Mr. Stone was here,
Yeah.
for a long time, it had transportation, it had maintenance, it had all those other functions, and which I never understood, but that was just the way that it was here, and just never made sense to me, because those are operational side, where the student services side should be connected with instruction.
Right.
Have maybe 2 short questions, I hope.
Sure.
And Angela found the job description, what I had saw on the
Part-time
yellow
tech
page.
support.
But, so how does this change your responsibilities, and do you have an updated job description?
Well, interesting. I other than applying for this job through Ray and Associates, I don't know if the board has. There would have been a job description that Ray and Associates would have created with the board on what you were looking for in a superintendent. I've not seen that. That's never been given to me.
It doesn't even have to be physical. How does your responsibilities change with a chief of staff?
Well, certainly, my roles and responsibilities are in under statute, which is the day-to-day operations of the school district. Right? So now you've got the chief of staff and now you've got the deputy superintendent. One of the things that the board has made crystal clear to me is that you would like me to be more in this community, and has said to me over and over again, I'm doing too much. I'm doing too much. I'm doing too much. I'm into the day-to-day operations, and I have to be because of the situation in which I started, and as we continue to evolve, some things have gotten better. There's still more work to do. That has been one of the major things that the board has asked. This will allow. Hopefully, we're going to be going for another millage in May, and that will allow me that opportunity to be out more in the community. It is still going to be in the function of the day-to-day operations. I still have a whole set of goals that the board approved back in September. I've got all 6 of those standards. I don't think I need to, if you want me to go through those about what I would be doing. But what I also envision that where I personally need to be is we need to do a better job of marketing this school district. We need to do a better job of communicating our new vision and mission and strategic plan. One of the things that we've not been able to get to is really taking our 5 goals that we've talked about and blow those out into performance targets. We've started this work. We've got it in instruction. We've got it in Goal 2. Goal 3 is our biggest area where we do not have metrics. That's organizational effectiveness. We've got some in Goal 4, which is Mr. Smith's shop, which will be underneath this as well. But to truly drive change and organizational effectiveness, you've got to put a project management structure into place. And so if you look at the job description of the chief of staff, calls for Viper teams. And basically what Viper teams are, on a 30,000-foot view, we had a 100-day plan, and there are themes that came out of the 100 days. We've taken the themes out of the 100 days, and we've turned those into 5 goals. Now we want to take the 5 goals, and we want to create project management teams that are monitoring those metrics, but are also looking at research-based strategies to implement and monitor, and to be able to see where we are in moving those indicators as we move forward. I mean, that's just many of a lot of things. Also, you're going to see some data tonight. You're going to see some data next week. I need to be involved on the instructional side of the house. That's what you hired me for as being an instructional leader. You're going to see some of our baseline data. We've got work to do here, and that's certainly my area of expertise that I will be spending more time in that role.
And I think last question, if I could.
Sure.
It's really important for the future of this district, and I've got several calls as of late. Madam President, I'd like for Dr. Hooper to come up. If we could, I have a couple of questions for her as well.
Okay.
Good evening, Board President and members of the board.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hooper. You are presently second in command of the school district. I think the communication we received with Dr. Paluski, you're going to be out. Something happens to you. You're at a conference. Normally, you tell us Dr. Hooper is going to be in charge. I want to know, with this plan, sure, where do we go from here? Have you been involved with the process of this presentation, putting it together, giving your input? Do you understand what will be your new roles and responsibilities as it relates to this organizational chart?
I have not been involved in terms of the extent of it. I was notified of it. We were notified of it in our executive team session. Now, to the extent of the specifics, no.
Mr. Superintendent, how would that affect, again,
Sure.
God forbid something happens to you,
Yeah, God forbid.
you have a toenail that comes off or something, you have to be out for an extended period of time. Again, normally you would tell us Dr. Hooper's in charge. Is that the same with this organizational chart, or who would be in charge?
Sure. So,
We're responsible for this district every minute of every day.
yes, sir, I am.
So
Yes,
I
sir.
want to know
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am.
what's going to happen.
Yeah, so typically you're right. If I'm out, Dr. Hooper is my backup, my next point of contact. We have this structure within our district. No matter if I'm out or any of our executive team out, they have to report to us who their backup is. There's also been times in this organization where both Dr. Hooper and I have been both out. Mr. Brown, the CFO, has been in charge.
Mr. Brown would be,
Well,
that was going to be my next question.
Well, currently this is how this operates. So there's also been cases where I've been out, Dr. Hooper's been out, and Mr. Brown's been out, and Mr. Smith was the designee. So there are times where we've been out together. This just gives the superintendent flexibility. If I'm out, it's Dr. Hooper, or it can be if she's out, it is the chief of staff. So it just gives that chain of command within authority of somebody that is supporting the superintendent while in the day-to-day operations while they're not there.
So the chief of staff, it's a possibility that he or she could be in control of the districts in your absence.
Sure.
So now there's pretty much a choice.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, if I'm out and Dr. Hooper's out, then I have to designate somebody to be in my role. And so in this case, it would be the chief of staff would be that person if the both of us were out. So it just gives the superintendent flexibility. As I mentioned, there have been opportunities where we've both been out.
And both of you being out, then you said Mr. Brown then would become the next person.
Right. Typically, I mean, you get those
or
texts.
is there a choice?
Well, number one, Mr. Brown's the CFO. So it's a superintendent's choice as a designation. Mr. Brown's been a long time principal. He's been in this district a long time. So I'm highly confident if it's not Dr. Hooper, then that becomes the next person. But it's certainly at the discretion of the superintendent to designate that individual. But it's at a high level. It's at an executive level.
I think the question that was mentioned during the committee report earlier is that there was not an emphasis on educational background for the chief of staff. You want to speak to that, please?
Sure. We hire people all the time. I think of two people right now that we've hired in our organization. I will not mention their names. They came from the private business world. In fact, we hired a stellar individual that had spent their entire career with the Hyatt Corporation. They had not been in education. I think of other individuals that we've hired from the private sector that are part because they're in the operations side. Could the individual that is selected have an education background? Sure. But it wouldn't be necessary because we have people in all walks of life that are in, all the operations side that have not been in the field of education. And so I don't think we want to limit ourselves, at least I don't want to limit myself for the opportunity of the potential of somebody that can help us as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, I question. How would this organizational chart change? Would it change? You said this is instructional, so it remain the same?
Well, right, I'm always looking at our organization and currently how it's structured. And so, always looking at the instructional side. Right now, our focus is on the operations side. But I do think, looking at the organization of how we are organized, how we're supporting schools, certainly, like for an example where we have right now the vacancy of the executive director of secondary schools, which we just spoke about, that position is posted and we've got applicants. So this will change as some of those positions get filled to be able to support our schools.
Okay, so the board have an update chart of this.
Sure, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to provide a little bit more detail. In fact, as we go forward, what we will do is each department will have its own page, because that way you can see the intricacies of each department. So for an example, under Mr. Smith, he would need to have his own organizational chart under HR department. Right now it just says 6.0 staff, but the public as well as the board would need to see who those 6 individuals are, what are those 6 positions, what do they do. I'll go all the way to the other side, which is in Mr. Barnes' shop, that we've added most recently 2 specialists, one that is a multimedia specialist, and the second one is web services. So just so you can see what those positions are at a granular level. When you look at some of the major departments, when you look at transportation, that includes everything from our mechanics down there to our dispatchers, under Chief Finks, so all of those really need to be blown out organizationally, and that's part of my role. I also believe that this needs to be in our budget book as we go forward. That's something we've tried to get towards organizationally, because this is the structure that is trying to get us to the improvement side of this district. And not to go back to the 100-day transition plan, I think it's on slide 72. We talked about organizational dysfunction. Although we've improved, we still have areas to look at that are inefficient. Are there areas of waste within departments that we need to do a better job at and take a look at? The chief of staff will help be able to do that on the operations side of the house. So remember, you got the operations side, but you also got the instruction side. School districts only exist for one reason: children and teachers. Everybody else in the organization is here to support that happening every single day.
Well, since you are over here, Dr. P, and you can see these staff members and what they're doing, if we vote and decide to give you this, my main thing was, always to you, I'd always say, spend more time with your directors so that we, as a board, don't hear teachers complaining. Everybody gonna have a little itch sometime, but you are the man that runs the district, and they'd like to hear it from you. You understand? That's what the only thing I said I wanted you to have, so you could be with them and really and I think Mr. Steele had mentioned, say, well, you need to be a little tight sometime, to keep up, to know, because I get phone calls and that, I have to ignore them, Dr. P, because I know that, as I said, I know you're busy trying to meet the community. But I would like for you to just step up, and since this opportunity has been given to you, so you can get in building 161, you can get into the middle school, you can get into the high school, and if this will help you do those things, wow, that's going to be totally awesome. Because
Yes,
I
ma'am.
see your walkthroughs when you have them on Thursdays, I believe. You're doing good about that. But perhaps you need more walkthroughs. But with you giving us this opportunity to hire somebody, you can walk all over. Okay?
Well, Ms. Williams, and I appreciate that, and I think from day one I have stepped up. I was just at the high school today. You'd ask the high school principals. I've done bus duty 2 times last week and the week before. Been to the middle school. I try to do as much as I can. In my weekly board report, the first thing you get is my calendar. You see exactly who I'm spending time with, where I'm spending time with, trying to solve problems, trying to move this school district forward. You also, on the other side of that, at every regular meeting, we have the opportunity for board member involvement and superintendent involvement. And I know you all laugh when I say I'm going to go fast. And meeting with the teacher advisory, meeting with the parent advisory, trying to do a lot of things. But yes, this would help spending more time in schools, and that's where I need to be. I need to be spending more time on the instructional side of the house and with Dr. Hooper. And again, we're going to show you some data next week. We've got some work to do.
And I thank you too, Dr. Hooper, for all of the work that you've done before in whatever organizational change. And I know that there are other people, and I want to say to you directors that are sitting out there, you are all good at what you do until we learn differently, okay? And it's always good to give you a pat on the back, but when you're not doing good, it's up to the superintendent to tell you. Thank you. Dr. P, you want the vote now?
I'd just like to say one thing.
Yeah, I think there's other people who have things
I'd like to say something.
Sure, Ms. Williams,
Uh,
go ahead.
When I saw this organizational chart with the chief of staff, not that one, but the other one, it makes so much sense that all of these operational things are going to be under that person. And then you have the curriculum side that's going to be totally in the learning part of this district. I love this. I love the way that you've structured it.
Thank you, Ms. McLean.
Dr. Redis?
I'm good. I'm ready to make a
Okay.
motion.
Oh, you called him for the question?
Pump your brakes 10 speed.
You're putting it
Um,
down and talk.
This is, I don't really have necessarily a question. This is just my only comment. It is my hope that with this particular organization chart, I mean, we have to definitely try something until we find that fit that is proper for us, because we're trying to figure stuff out. So this is my thing here. My hope is that we, if we vote on this, then, and it is favorable, I would definitely hope and implore everyone to work together and to be patient with everyone and each other, and that we all just kind of stay in our lane and be positive about this particular new change. And be, hold on. And just kind
I
of
thought you were through. I'm
give
sorry.
us time to just kind of work through some kinks on some things and just be patient with each other and be respectful.
I would just like for you to read these operations that are under the chief of staff in case there's someone watching, because we keep talking about the operation side, and I think it's,
Sure.
if you name those, then they'll understand what
Sure.
we're talking about.
I'd be absolutely honored. So under the chief of staff, the proposal is the following departments, which are operation sides of the house. That would include the executive director of human resources, the chief financial officer, so all of finance, director of safety services, so all of our safety under Chief Finks, all of our communications coordination under Mr. Barnes, all of food nutrition services under Ms. Mary Lee Dennis, all of transportation that is under Ms. Coleman, all of maintenance and facilities. We do, although Mr. Ward currently is in the role as the acting supervisor, we've reorganized that from the supervisor to the director role. We do have applicants, so this individual would be overcharge of all the maintenance operations as well. It would be also under the custodial services in Mr. Martin, and then also would have information technology under Mr. Riddle, so all the IT side. So that organizes all of the operations, which are all about to support schools, to support principals, to support teachers, to support students.
So these aren't the reading, writing, and arithmetic people here.
No, these, if you go back to our moral purpose, like as a moral purpose, which you have right in front of you, that as a community, we want to have a high-quality teacher, have a high-quality leader, and be in a safe and supportive learning environment. We've got to transport kids every single day safely. We've got to feed students. We've got to have high-quality teachers and leaders, which is in HR. We've got to be safe. We've got to make sure the technology that they have works. It's up and running. I use those as lots of examples. And we've got to have the resources. If we get grants that are targeted, and we've got many of those, that there's people that are there working towards supporting schools and supporting principals. And, you know, where I would love to get is grounded in the research of Meredith Honing at the University of Washington around central office transformation. And it's all about getting and aligning the district to support the children, the teachers, and are there things in central office that are helping principals with being instructional leaders, or are there things coming from central office that are hindering their work in being instructional leaders?
Well, this is where I want to jump in, because since I've been on the board, I feel like we are constantly battling operational issues, and we never get to the educational issues. It has been insane, and we've done so much to improve that, but there's still so much to do there. And one person over all that makes more sense than anything I've seen. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Dr. Paluska,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Williams.
since you always here doing the neighborhood, excuse me, was it your turn?
No, they wasn't me. I was quiet for a change.
Okay. Since, you know, you have all this rumbling, people continuously talking about why we hire people continuously. Would you, in your own words, when you came to North Little Rock School District, would you please express why you had to hire the people that you had to hire? Would you tell the truth on that? I know the truth.
What, I'm trying to think why I had to hire so, well, if,
You
So-
came in here, you had to do what you had to do, but
Yes,
what
ma'am.
did you see to motivate you to do what you did?
well, you know, the first thing is if you're a superintendent, right? The first thing you're going to look is the organizational chart, and look at that and look at, does it make sense? Is it functioning the right way? To get to the bottom line of improving instruction. If you remember all the way back to the very first reorganization that we did, the first one that created the deputy superintendent, that was the first one. The second one created the Office of School Performance and Curriculum. But with that is, there had never been, at least to my knowledge, at least a decade where the system had been reorganized. And there are many reasons for that I've gathered since I've arrived, but organizationally, there's a lot of things that just didn't make sense. And I don't know a lot of the back history. I've got my hunch as to why prior superintendents maybe could not reorganize maybe the way that they wanted to, but certainly the way that the system is organized has an impact on the overall effectiveness of the organization. So that was hitting the ground on day one, looking at that, yes, there's some issues on the instructional side of the house that need to be addressed, and that was the very first reorganization that we've done. If you remember, the second one that we did was at the request of the board, said speed it up, bring us a safety and reorganization, which we did. We had the Gibson audit report, which grounded the basis of the research of reorganizing human resources. Not in that, but we reorganized 7th Street Elementary School. Next Friday is going to be a monumental moment when we get to rename that school. And then now we've gone to work on the instructional side of the house that we've had to kind of put the brakes on, but we're working on looking at that, and that looks at the instructional and wraparound services side.
Well done. My good
Thank you.
and faithful servant.
Okay, that's my words. Okay, so just wrapping it up in a bow, because you know I love my bows. Chief of Staff will have 9. Deputy Superintendent will have 4 plus an assistant, and then the superintendent will have 6 plus 7 board members. And for the record, you and I were on the phone for over 2 hours last night, past 11 p.m. I apologize, Bianca. So with that being said, I know I can be needy at times, and I know others can be needy at times. So thank you for all the work that you do.
I don't think there's a time that I've not taken a phone call, or if not, I remember Mr. Steele called me one time at 10:30. Did I pick up the phone, Mr. Steele?
You did.
So I try to be, and I think, as you all know, this is a 24/7, 365 job.
Yeah.
100%. 100.
So tonight, you want us to go ahead and approve this position?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Hooper.
Thank you, Dr. Hooper.
So the recommendation is, you'll see that it's in your sheet that's there, if I pulled it up, that the superintendent recommends to accept the updated FY25 non-licensed professional salary schedule as proposed, to include the word chief. That's all you're really voting on, but you know the reorganization of that, the reason to do that is to create for the chief of staff position. And I do believe, Ms. Colquitt, it is on your yellow sheet that's updated.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't hear.
I have a comment before your motion, if that's okay. Well, I know it's late, and I do apologize. It's a really important issue because it's never been done before, to my knowledge. Ms. Williams, I don't know if I'm missing anything.
We'll know it.
It's never been done before, and I just wanted to say, even before the vote, it's really important, and it's important we ask these questions. I'm sure several of you know, most of the questions I get are not originated by me. They're questions that I get from the community. And if the community in any kind of way, shape, or form, we have a tremendous advantage because we can pick up the phone and call you at 11 o'clock or whenever. The public does not. They do not get the type and depth of information that we get. So even most of the questions that we asked, I know most of the questions Ms. Williams asked, we already know the answer, but they're not for us. They're for others. And in any way, shape, or form that the community in North Little Rock feels that we're not forthright, that we're not 100% transparent, we will never get the full support of the North Little Rock community when we go to them with things like a millage, when we go to them with things like support. So in my estimation, the more questions, the better. So when you come out of this, people will feel, hopefully, that, they thoroughly discussed it. They didn't just pass it. They didn't just do something in that little room back there and come out. Exactly. They didn't come out and just say, hey, we're going to move forward with this. It's already a done deal. So it will benefit you better later.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And let me real quick, I'm sorry, just real quick. What did you say, 25 years since the North Little Rock School District has had an update on the organization chart?
No, I didn't say 25 years. It was estimated between 10 and 12 years.
That's really kind of that's really too long. I mean, you're supposed to kind of go back and relook at things, and so I would consider this as far as being innovative. But you got to kind of go back to the table every now and then and see what's working, what's not working, and let's change some things and make streamline. That's what I'm looking. So this is a good thing to streamline.
Yeah.
What am I saying? I don't know. Y'all leave me alone. Streamline the whole stuff. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Go on.
I'll take the motion.
Well, let me say one thing then.
Okay. Go on.
While you're trying to think of what you wanted to say. I had some people that were talking about, gosh, you're doing another position, that's going to be more money. And I'm like, no, it's not any more money because we had a vacant position that was now going away.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's some people out there in the community that even though you've been very clear about that at our last presentation, when you came to us with this, you made it very clear about that, but there are people that I guess didn't watch the board meeting.
It's also in the yellow sheet as well.
I know.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make that clear that this is not adding another
That's right. It's reorganizing.
staff salary.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Great points. Can I make a motion?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve 5.3 for fiscal year 25 non-licensed professional salary schedule update that includes the Chief of Staff.
Second.
Okay. Moving properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members of our Board of Education.
Madam President,
Uh-huh.
I so move that we accept the Community Service Learning Partner application.
Second.
Okay. Moving properly second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn and go into workshop.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Meeting is adjourned. On to workshop.
All right, Dorothy, you're in charge. She's got to go get her stuff.
I know. We've already discussed this. Thank you very much.
Mama, 6:30, come on.
No, you got to give her time, baby. Give her time. You got to get on the right screen.
So, Madam Chair, we're going to start with, we'll do a high-level overview because I know the board has already mentioned that they've reviewed the slides, but our first information item is 2024-2005 North Little Rock School District Atlas K-3 screener data. And I know we've got some folks that are out, so Dr. White, welcome, and Ms. Langston, welcome, to give us a brief high-level overview of our screener data.
Good evening, Madam Board President, Dr. Paluski, members of the board. Thank you all for having us. So, as Dr. Paluski said, we are here to update you all on our screener data. So, the last time we were here, we provided you all a high-level overview of the screeners. So, the purpose of this presentation is to review the Arkansas Teaching and Learning Assessment System K-3 screener data for the 24-25 school year. And just as a reminder, like I said, we went into this last time, but as you see here, purpose of the screeners is to assess foundational skills and literacy and math and to help drive instructional decisions and support students who do not meet grade level foundational skills. So we now have our data back, and it is reported in two levels, and that is ready and potential risk. And if you'll notice, potential risk, that simply means that students are really not on grade level and they need additional support. So looking at our summary of results, we're really excited about our math data that you see here because the blue indicates ready. And if you can see, for mathematics, we have more students ready than we do at potential risk. A different story for literacy, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Ms. Langston will take you through that data. Okay, so if we can start just a high-level overview. This is a breakdown by grade level, and of course, as you can see, kindergarten, we have 61% of our students ready, which really is a testament to what's happening in pre-K as those students move forward. And then we have 52% of our first graders ready, and then 58% of our second graders ready. So this slide, as you know, you've already had access to the data. This is just simply showing you the state average and then, of course, the district average. And if you'll look at this, we've got several schools, that are meeting or beating the state average. Same thing for first grade math, second grade math, and then we'll get into literacy.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Carmen Langston. Once again, I am the coordinator of elementary reading and integrated literacy, and I'm here representing not only myself tonight, but also Ms. Chris, who could not be present, and she primarily supports kindergarten, first, second, and then also pre-K. So with that being said, I know that you all have had a chance to look at this, so I'll be cognizant of your time. You can see here our report for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. So our screeners in literacy also encompass third grade, whereas math is only K through 2. With that being said, here is our kindergarten literacy data. Up at the top, you can see the percentage of the state that averages out to ready, and our district as well. And then we have about 5 campuses there that did outperform the state for kindergarten literacy. We have 2 in first grade, 1 in second grade, and 1 in third grade. For our next step, since you have had a chance to look at that, we are asking the schools at this point to administer what are called testlets to students who are performing below grade level on those screeners. The testlets really do dig deeper into those foundational skills so that the teachers know what the students need support with. We will also ask that they continue Tier 1 instruction with a focus on grade level standards and instruction and responding to that student learning, and consistently deliver data-driven small group instruction. That is really where the power lies in moving this data forward. Conducting progress monitoring to let them know that what they're doing is working, and we also do report our progress to parents. For our role from the district, we will be supporting those schools with that effective instruction and small group instruction so they understand how to do that. We are also monitoring and giving feedback to principals, to coaches, and to teachers regarding that classroom instruction and intervention, and providing PD in the areas of lesson internalization and the use of our foundations, which is our foundational program for phonics. And lastly, providing that information to the families and letting them know how they can access this data online at home.
So that concludes.
Dr. Reddick?
We're happy to answer any questions.
I just have one. So, comparing from before, does this take the place of the letter grades for the schools? You know, how we used to get letter grades?
Right. So what we're going to share with you at the next board meeting is going to be the overall Atlas data. So what this is just screening students in the first 30 days when they come into school, almost like a doctor would a diagnostic, like where is little Greg right now? And so that those teachers know and those leaders know Greg needs an intervention and Dr. Redis does not, that kind of thing. And then what they're talking about is Teslitz is now monitoring that child until the next benchmark or a district interim assessment, so we can kind of take another sliver at a different moment in time to see, is Greg moving forward or not moving forward. So the screeners are not part of, they help us monitor to predict about achievement, but what we're going to see next week is the achievement score. That's 35% of a letter grade, and we should be getting by the end of the month the 50%, which is the growth score. So there's, yeah, this ties towards prediction of looking at that, but it's not in the ESSA school quality, the factors that they look at that give you points towards, but having we know the number of students that are in need of help or on grade level is going to be a predictor towards achieving grade level standards.
And I'd like to add that this is new in terms of having a math screener for K2. So historically we've not had that, and certainly we've not had any type of diagnostic assessments that would follow that. So this is new for those grade bands.
Ms. Walker?
Great report. I understand it's new. I understand we're all learning how to dissect this and go forward. This has given me really, really, really good data here. It says our kindergartners are doing well. I mean, 5 out of 4, we're past the state ready, so that's great. Great report.
Ms. West?
What I was looking at too is, and I understand this is just very new raw data, just kind of an overview, but I guess I want to hear more as far as what is, what is the specific plan as far, because I'm looking at some of these schools when we get into the literacy component.
So I'll let Ms. Langston cover the literacy and I'll take the
I
math.
know, hang on, I got this, thank you.
So for the plan for schools, for those ones whose scores were not what you would expect to see, we are doing different things. So right now, 2 particular schools are receiving heavy support from both myself and Ms. Chris, so we are kind of dividing and conquering there so that we can be more present at those campuses. We also have state literacy coaches that are assisting us in grades K through 3 with those campuses, and those campuses also have a building coach also. So there's always someone there that's going to support those schools at this point. We, as coordinators, primarily support the coaches, and the coaches support the teachers. So we are working with them on what to do next. We're also providing some training, not only to those schools, but to everybody, actually in 2 weeks, on Foundations, which is that foundational program. And I will be modeling within that, showing those teachers how to use that program with flexibility so that they understand how to make it a little bit more engaging for students and how they don't have to hold our kids back. They don't have to follow it to the letter. If our students are ready for more, then I'm going to be showing them how to give them more.
And I'm going to say for math, same thing, with the addition of, Ms. Langston spoke about the foundational training that she's offering. So today I've been sitting in a math training, and I've been in a math training all week, and it's a K2 training. And so really what it's doing, it's helping teachers to understand how to utilize the HQIM that we have, which is Eureka Math Squared. So teach them how to plan effectively and how to deliver that instruction to students, but then also how to develop those interventions to intervene when they see that students are just not grasping the concept or the skill.
And with that being said, do you think that because I'm looking at some particular schools, is this a situation where you feel like maybe it could be a language barrier? And how is that playing into, how is that playing into it?
Yes, so we have schools with high EL populations, and of course you probably know those schools. I won't call them out. However, we have ESOL specialists in each of those buildings who are working very closely with the classroom teachers. So they plan together. Also, they go in and they co-teach with the teacher. But more specifically, we're folding in various strategies that those teachers can utilize to ensure that all students have access to grade level instruction. And that's really what we're talking about here. When you look at those students who are at risk, that means they cannot access grade level instruction without adequate scaffolds. And so that's exactly what we're doing for those students, as we would any student,
Right.
whether or not there's a language barrier.
And that's kind of what I want to make sure that I put that out there so it's said publicly. And then going back to our organization chart that we just looked at, I see that you, since you are the director, you have 10 up under you. And so I just want to make sure that you as the head, you're taking the reign on that, and you're making sure that everybody is where they need to be, they're doing what they need to do, and then even if you have to fall in line and help out too, I just want to make sure that we are making sure that us as a team is, we're accessible to our schools, our students, and our teachers.
Absolutely. So one of the things, and I didn't share this before the board last year when I came before you all, but at 7th Street when we were down a GT teacher, because I'm certified in GT, I took that on. And I taught classes. Right now I'm heading up the K-5 social studies. I met with the committees last year. We'll be bringing a recommendation before the board this fall. Also with CTE, I'm heading that up as well, and that's of course secondary, but nevertheless I'm heading that up to determine resources there. But as far as making sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, the beautiful thing is when you lead a fabulous team like I do, you don't have to micromanage, but what you do is you do check-ins to see what support they need, check-ins to follow up to see what they are doing, but then check-ins to see if what they're doing is working. And so I do that as well, but I do jump in line, just like I said, this week I've got a coordinator out, and so I've been in that math PD standing in for her.
Thank you. That's all. Yes, ma'am, I'm done.
Okay, Ms. McLean.
Well, we do have some new terminology with testlets. Hadn't heard that one before. But does this Atlas screener take the place of something we've been doing at the beginning of the year?
Yes, ma'am, it does. So previously, we did give screeners, but they would have been with the teacher one-on-one, and I say paper pencil. So sitting down with the student, having them read, and then if they did not read on grade level, or it can be kindergarten where they're identifying letters, sounds, first grade as well. So we did that. We tracked all of that through some Excel spreadsheets. Now it's on the Atlas platform. So that can be a little bit confusing because Atlas is the statewide summative test, but it is a platform itself. So the state has now taken those screeners and put it under Atlas, but to your point that someone asked earlier, it isn't part of the letter grade piece. This is just exactly like we've been doing it before, but now it's electronic.
So that means the teachers don't have to do their own individual thing because now the kids are doing the Atlas screener.
Somewhat. So they do still have to sit with them and monitor them because it is on the computer, especially with those lower grades. This is going to be very new for them. So when we're getting into these testlets, the teachers are finding that they do need to kind of pull those students back to their table, usually about 5 or 6 kids, or if you have more, then they'll be walking around and just making sure they are clicking where they need to be clicking, staying with it, making sure they understand what the speaker online is saying. So there's still quite a bit.
Is the testlet something that is after you've done the screener?
Correct.
And so it's digging further.
That's correct.
So, and the kids will probably get used to this after they're doing it a few times.
That's right.
I also noticed about the literacy. It seemed like there was a silver lining to me. I don't know if this is a silver lining, so I'll ask y'all. But when you started with, and I need to get back over here to the slide where it said, where it has the state ready and then the district ready. Like at kindergarten, there's like 14% difference between the state ready and the district ready.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we go to grade 1, there's a 10% difference. Then when we go to grade 2, we've only got a 7% difference with the state. And we go to 3, and we've only got a 5% difference with the state. Now, granted, 12% at the state is not high.
No, ma'am.
And our district at 7% is not. But just looking at those decreases in the differences, to me, seems like a good thing.
Well, it tells you that we are kind of on track where everybody else is, especially if you look at our surrounding districts or even the districts within our co-op. Their data looks about like ours.
Okay. Could y'all remind me again of the Tier 1, the Tier 2, and the Tier 3?
For our students, Tier 1 will indicate those students who are at grade level. If they are Tier 2, they may need some still grade level standards, but it might be those standards that were taught previously and they still need extra support. For Tier 3, they are still needing some standards that are from previous grade levels, either one or two or more grade levels behind.
There were some of the screens that had they used Tier 1 for something, and then I'd see a Level 1 or a Level 2, and I was getting a little confused on some of those things. Not that I have to know those exactly, but I didn't know what the difference was with things that were designated as Level 1, if that equated to Tier 1 or not.
Right,
But
so the levels, we have the screener, and then the testlets would be considered a Level 1. If we don't get enough data and aren't seeing progress as we begin to intervene, then we may need to go into a Level 2 screener, and that's where my colleagues from the dyslexia department come into play, and they can speak to that a little bit more, but we've all had some recent training on Level 2 screeners and how that will go, but we're looking a little bit deeper at that point into why is that student not progressing.
And you might also be referring to the summative data, which we're going to get into that the next time we're here. So you do have 4 levels, ranging from limited to basic to proficient to advanced, and they are numerical. So that may be what you're referring to. So like I said, next time we're here, we're going to get into that.
And that's new language too, how they broke that down of the different levels of where a child is. So it's,
okay.
and we'll get into the dyslexia here in a minute.
Well, it sounds like y'all are on top of this. I see your next steps. You've explained some for Ms. Person West down there, so it sounds like we are on track and rolling with it, so that's very, very good. Great report. Thank you.
Mrs. Steele?
A good report, no questions.
Okay.
Let me just ask a real quick question. Do you think that as far as like with this literacy, this is a lot of kids now are more screen focused and they just don't read books now or just sit down with the Go Spot Go and See Spot Run, and they learn how to start forming those sentences, or learn how to sit down and read a book. And that's to me what I see when I start looking at these numbers as far as the availability of just books to put in their hands versus
100%.
Yes.
We've got to get more kids reading. We've got to get more
Yes,
kids that
and
have books in their hands. 100%.
and I don't see those. I haven't seen books like that in a long. And I just remember, back in my day as a kindergarten, first grade, second grader, we had bookshelves in our house. Bored, get a book, go read. Bye bye. Go on.
Well, we have the Dolly
We do, but
part in
at what
literacy.
point are we not educating parents maybe to, hey, you need to, hello, little Gregory, you need to go sit down and give me 5 minutes of reading time.
Out loud at the
Out
dinner
loud,
table.
we need
Well,
to
there's
maybe start-
definitely a parent. There's definitely a parent component of that. In fact, under the LEARNS Act, there has to be individual reading plans for every child that does not meet the proficiency, and under the LEARNS Act, has to have a read-at-home plan, which is exactly what you're talking about. So that's underway right now, our individual reading plans, and that's the next step, is then the outreach with parents has to sit down to say, this is Greg's read-at-home plan, which we're required to now under the law, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing, because I remember signing those sheets.
And I just want to add too, we didn't speak about it here tonight, but grades 3 through 8, they will have math intervention plans, and so the same support will be provided to families as well.
That's a good point.
I love it.
Good point, Dr. White.
Very good. We're doing good. But I'm impressed about the kindergartens. So impressed. They even got an award last spring from the state, but was never brought to the board. I don't know if you all knew that.
Yes.
But they were awarded, the state recognized them because of the growth of North Rock. Most impressive. And so they blowing that out the wind. I think they say if they can get all the teachers, you know, the other teachers, really get them involved, we'll perhaps have 100%. But getting involved is going to school, additional hours and things.
Yes,
but I want to say North Rock is doing great. And I thank you for the report. I really like to differentiate between the state and what we're doing. So we're doing okay. And thank you for that. Any other board members having the last minute thoughts?
I just wanted to add, Ms. Williams, to your point is when we talk about the achievement gap, this is where it starts. And we're seeing it right now begin to close by the work that's happening. And the more that we can get more kids on grade level, to your point, that's just going to continue. That's the only.
Third grade.
That's
You
right.
don't have to worry about the third
That's
grade
right.
being retained.
That's right.
If they're getting all of this.
We're off to a good start.
kindergarten.
And then further look at those, what we talked about before, those wraparound services as far as
Sure.
making sure that we have more parental involvement and or making sure that the mom can, and the father, that they're on reading level to help work with that at home.
Yep.
If
Great.
there, Dr. Pruitt, it's on you. If there are no other further
No,
questions.
thank you, Dr. White. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Langston.
you. Good
Thank
report.
you.
That's some good information.
So we'll move right into there with the next one, which is 1.2 information item, which is the Wilson Reading System Tier 3 interventions, which we were just kind of a little bit talking about. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stoll, our Executive Director of Student-Centered Services and Secondary Schools, and then she's going to introduce her whole entire team, which is no strangers to the North Little Rock School District. Dream team.
Good evening, Madam President, or Vice President, acting as President, and members of the board, and Dr. Poliski. Tonight, I want to introduce my team to you first. I have, to my left, the Dyslexia Sisters, as we like to call them, Miss Amanda Powell and Miss Gretchen McCoy. And then to my right, I have two of our special ed coordinators, Miss Katina Beasley and Dr. Natalie McGill. And not with us tonight are Sharon Hackbart, who is our secondary spec coordinator, and Tiffany Randall, who you heard a little bit about earlier. But I wanted to say their names as well because as I've stepped up to a lot of different roles, this team right here they showed up and showed out and have stepped up, and our departments are running flawlessly. And I wouldn't want to do this job or couldn't do this job without my team. And so I wanted to publicly recognize them here tonight before we start so that you could see their faces, because they have done a lot of work, and I'm so proud and happy to work with them.
Great
That
job.
is very nice to say that. That is so good.
And also, this is my first time before y'all since we have moved into our new building, and I have not been able to say thank you, thank you. We all say thank you because we were the people in the annex. And it was...
Mickey misses you.
it was falling down around us. And so we are so proud now to be able to meet parents, have IEP meetings. We are testing students, and we have been able to have so many trainings of our staff, of dyslexia, of SPED, of all of our sub-pops, our OT, our PT, and our paras, and they've all been able to come out to our building. And so we're just really proud of that building, and that is in large part to you all for getting us out of the annex, and Dr. Paluski for forging that. And so I just wanted to say thank you to the board, and I know they all do too, because it was a long time coming, and we really appreciate it, and we're proud of where we are now, so thank you. And so with all that, I'm going to move into our presentation, and my clicker is Amanda. She forgot for a second. Okay, so the purpose tonight, we're going to talk to you. Ms. McLean's question was just perfect timing talking about the tiers, because we were talking about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 is those special populations we're going to talk to you about tonight with dyslexia and special education. We're going to talk to you about the dyslexia law, the screening process, how they qualify for those services, and then we're going to also talk to you about our Wilson Reading System program, which this board brought before Dr. Paluski was here. You voted that in, and we have seen great things. And so they're going to give you some of that data tonight so that you can see all about Wilson Reading System and how far we've come and where we're going with that. And then the last thing they're going to discuss is the academic reading program that we have. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, and let them speak.
Okay, and these next two slides, I'm not going to go into detail because actually Ms. Langston and them covered it well. But if you want to read this, it is about the district screening requirements, and it goes over the universal screeners into the testlets, which you just heard, and then where level 2 comes in. And more than anything, what we wanted you to know is we have all this in place. So the systems are in place so that we are touching all the students, and we have lots of data to look at, and then talking about how we move into the level 2, which is those students that are really struggling and maybe 2 to 3 years behind. And we're looking at, do they need further support, which would be that tier 3 intervention. So these two slides, I'm not going to go into detail, but it does indicate all the things we have in place that make sure that we know where all students are in their learning.
Okay, so when we do require a level 2 assessment, we always want to make sure that building principals and RTI committees are involved. Then we have the classroom teacher fill out that survey because it just helps us gather more data on that student. We contact parents, we get permission to assess, and then we review all the data. After we get parent consent, we give those assessments, we score them, and then we see, does that student exhibit characteristics of dyslexia? If we think, yes, they do, or if we think, okay, no, they don't really have those characteristics, regardless, we have a conversation with the parent. So we meet and go over every assessment with the parent. We decide best placement with the parent. So it's a conversation with them where we bring up the data. Then we work with them to see, is this really what my student needs? Is this best for my student? And the parent works with us to make that determination for tier 3 services. Right now we have, like Ms. Langston had mentioned, we are training more teams at building levels and elementaries to help administer those level 2 assessments, just to really help with that early identification process, because it is a lot. And with the LEARNS Act, we are going to have to start testing more students with the level 2s. So we just talked about how we identify and place students. Now we're going to move into exiting the program. And so each week we have our interventionists turn in progress monitoring data to us. They fill out spreadsheets. They are doing assessments each week on decoding words, spelling words. They turn in all that progress to us. We also work closely with them to determine when a student is ready to be released from the program. So there's all the ways a student can be released. It's really, are they able to perform at grade level? Are they really able to use those skills they've learned in interventions and apply them in the regular classroom? So if we make the decision that a student is ready to exit the program, we always have a conversation with the parent. It's really, we want them to be okay with that decision, and then we make the determination on if that student's ready. And we also let the parent know if at any time their student is starting to struggle or they feel like their student needs that supporting in, we can go back and reconsider their placement and put them right back in. We do want to highlight that last year we had 52 students that successfully graduated from dyslexia services. So they made it through the program, they are at grade level, and they are performing very well in the classroom right now. So that's
Very
something
good.
we really did want to celebrate tonight.
That's good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then we also wanted to talk about, to be completely transparent, that yes, our goal is always graduating or exiting the program on grade level, but you have to keep in mind factors that will impact that. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to highlight a few, you have to remember dyslexia is a disability, and it can range from mild to severe. So students with characteristics of dyslexia need repeated opportunities to practice skills. So, and then to obtain that mastery. So it may take one student not very long, it may take one student years, and it may be a lifelong struggle. So we try to be very transparent with parents as well, that this is not an overnight fix, but it will give them strategies to become stronger readers and give them that confidence. I always say reading is about motivation, and that's a big part of it. But that is truly what we deal with when we think about exiting the program. Another thing, and Carmen, Ms. Langston and them discussed this, was Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. If across the state you're seeing literacy rates where they are, that impacts Tier 3.
Yeah.
Tier 3 is the we are focusing 2 to 3 years behind on those skills.
Yep.
The student still has to get Tier 1, good instruction, and fill those gaps on grade level. And then to me, when you ask what's the most important piece, grade level content, but it is that small group in the classroom, because then they get to practice what they've just done. And that's where we're heading this year and focusing, because we haven't been as strong with that. With that, small group has to be in place. And then our kids get more practice with us at those skills that are
missing below that, and that's what will truly close the gap. So that's where we are, and I think that is what we have to focus on in order to our students to continue to have success and exit the program. So those are just some factors that impact it, and I think we are well on our way to identifying the issues and trying to work on that. So, and then we just wanted you to know where we are currently. We're serving 733 students in grades K through 12 for characteristics of dyslexia. I will tell you, when you see the numbers that you see of our students struggling, what's hard is how do you differentiate between true characteristics of dyslexia and just a struggling learner, so or just a struggling reader. And so that's when we talk about numbers and looking, that's where we're all looking at the testing data and figuring out what we need to do. Do we need to identify them as, you know, struggling with characteristics of dyslexia, or do they just need intervention, reading intervention? But we have 733 students currently. You'll notice that last year we have 930 students. I will explain that number. That was the number that we had at the end of the year. So that's the students that we served all year. We did have students leave and go to other schools, but we also had students exit the program, 55 students. We had students actually graduate from high school. And also, we test all year. We don't have a testing window. So that number, 733, is going to increase. And because of the Atlas platform, we're a little bit behind. We've been waiting on that screener information to come, but our referrals are coming in and we are testing. So just know our number is always fluctuating. One thing we wanted to talk about was, let's take a moment to once again thank you, because we have 30 dyslexia interventionists. This district should be very proud of their dyslexia program. They are highly skilled teachers, so we have 16.5 of them in the elementary. They serve our students that are identified with characteristics of dyslexia. They also serve as like RTI groups, so some students that have not been placed, but we're watching them and trying to figure out what they need. They also push into classrooms, and they're highly trained so they can work with teachers on good practices in the classroom as well. You also see that at the high school we have 13.5 interventionists, and you can see, you know, the amount of students that they serve each day. So that's just kind of an overview of the program.
Now we're going to talk about the weight assessment. We give this weight assessment 2 times. When a student enters our program, we give this assessment to give us that baseline data, so we can really tell where the student is struggling and then also where the student has some strengths. The next time we give the student the assessment is as a summative assessment. So at the end of every single school year, they're given this weight assessment, and it's really to tell, have they been able to master the skills that they were taught in interventions? So from what they learned all year, were they able to master it? So that's another reason why we give it, because it also gives us good information. We use that information to help with professional development. We use it to determine progress and success within our program, and then we can tell, are they really mastering all those skills? And as you know, growth in our program is very important because our students do have a disability and sometimes they cannot perform at grade level. So now we're going to really drill down into the data. So if you'll notice, this is the data from last year. So we use the WADE data from last year because that's pretty much the best data that we have, and it covers the whole school year. So if you notice, that first column of percentages are, that's the students who were able to master what they were taught throughout the 23-24 school year. The next column are students who, they just need more time being what they taught. They need more time working with the skills that they were taught. So they need more review, they need more repetition. So they did not master those skills. The third column of percentages are those students that also have special education services. So they get services for characteristics of dyslexia and also special education. And we also wanted to bring to your attention the absenteeism rates, because that does impact if students are able to master what they're taught. If we just look at AMBOY, we can do AMBOYs together since that's the first one on there. If you notice, 97% of their students achieved mastery. Only 3% did not. But what we do want to highlight and also celebrate this too, 32% of the students also receive special education services. So that's really telling to what great interventionists and what great special education teachers we have in our buildings, because they're at a 97% rate of mastery. The other thing I wanted to pinpoint, at Meadow Park, you see 33% of their students miss 10 or more days in a semester. So as you can tell, they do have a lower number of mastery. So not being at school really does impact instruction, and that right there, that shows it clearly. The next slide are our secondary schools. It works just as the first slide does, or the first set of data works, but we also want to point out again that at middle school we really are struggling with attendance, but we're still, we're still able to really achieve some good scores as far as mastery goes.
And just one more thing that we wanted to highlight is the academic reading course. This is offered at secondary, grades 6 through 12. And what it does is these are students with characteristics of dyslexia, and they also get, so they go and they get their dyslexia intervention, but they also are going over grade level reading standards. So they pull in those reading essential standards and use those to pull in fiction, nonfiction books, and to do book studies and all of those things, and really working on comprehension and things like that. So this is a wonderful course that we have, and one thing we wanted to point out is if you're in grades 9 through 12, you receive a credit for this course. And we talked to districts around the state, and they ask us, how do you keep your students in the class, because they still need it in high school sometimes, because their kids want to drop out of it. And it's because we give them a credit. And so a lot of the other kids are dropping out, even though they need it, because they need to get a credit class. Well, this, they can receive a credit because it is giving on standards that are on grade level, and it keeps them in that, so they're still receiving those strategies that they need, and it really builds their confidence. And the stories that, if you talk to our high school dyslexia interventionists, they just talk about how special it is working with those students and pulling in the grade level books and working on that, which we do through all grades, but just really focusing on that at the high school to get them ready for the things that they need. So it's been a very worthwhile endeavor.
So just a few points from the special ed side. 22% of the students who receive dyslexia services also receive SPED services such as language arts inclusion. In middle school, we use Wilson Reading System to serve the bottom 15% of our SPED population who do not necessarily have characteristics of dyslexia, but do score very low in decoding and encoding.
So right now, currently, we have about 60 students in grades 6 through 8 who get dyslexia services, as well as inclusion from our SPED teachers. So they get dyslexia and language art instruction. And then in K-12, we have students, the students who have characteristics of dyslexia, they also get support from the SPED teacher through inclusion during the teaching model.
Next step.
Lastly, these are just our next steps. So we just want to say how excited we are about everything North Little Rock School District has to offer for our students with characteristics of dyslexia, and our students also receiving those special education services. We're just going to continue to work with our interventionists and support them as best as we can. We really want to, thank you, we really are trying to develop leaders within our buildings, and so that we really want them to start to speak to those data numbers, and we really want them to be smart and able to work with our teachers and really just impact their buildings. We also want to focus on deepening our knowledge of that Atlas platform. There's so much it has to offer, and it's just going to take time for us working through those kinks and learning how to best use it. And lastly, we're just going to keep monitoring data and work on supporting our RTI process within buildings too, because that way it will really impact how great Tier 3 is.
So that's all the information we have for you all tonight. As you can see why I'm so lucky to work with these brilliant team of women. They do such a fabulous job. So we're just happy to be able to come here tonight and give you some of our data because we have a small but mighty sub-pop, and our scores do play an impact too in the whole scheme of things.
Mrs. Steele?
Thank you, Madam President. I love your team. I love the energy you have, the camaraderie you guys have, and the way you just seem to just love what you do. All thing I can say, well, watch out for the haters. Keep doing what you're doing a great job. No more questions, ma'am.
I agree. I mean, the enthusiasm is evident, and the report was great. It was detailed. It was easy to understand, and your next steps are laid out. I love that you're supporting and training those interventionists. how you're able to look and say, well, what kind of professional development do we need? So it's great. Thank you. And I'm glad y'all are happy in your new building.
Ms. West?
I love the information presented. I'm totally excited about it. And as I would say a former student, because you're always a lifelong learner, that is dyslexic, I appreciate the work that you all do. Fortunately, I had a hard-working parent that was an educator that made sure that she helped me work through all that kind of stuff. So every now and then it creeps up to where, you know, when you spoke to it being a lifelong situation, you have to always focus to work through that. So I appreciate all the work that you all do. Thank you.
Ms. Welcome.
Great report. I just wanted to kind of highlight again, currently we are serving 733 students, kindergarten through 12th grade, with characteristics of dyslexia. That doesn't touch on our special education level, which is separate.
So we are currently serving, as of December 1 last year, that's when we do our child counts, 1,122 special education students, in addition to the 733 dyslexic students, and some of those cross over, but that's our current numbers. If you look at our district, I always put that report in the, because Dr. Redis asked me to start putting our numbers for special education. If you look at our total district numbers and you do that percentage, we have a very high percentage, almost 15% special education students, and it's quite expensive to educate special needs students that have disabilities. So I always highlight that in my board report. That's why you see that every week. So you guys can be mindful when people say we spend a lot of money on special ed and dyslexia. We do, but it takes a lot, as you can see from all the things we do. It takes a lot to keep our students on track and to see growth.
So with that being said, the transparency here tonight and the transparency that we have posted on our website and the transparency that we have within the budget book of what we spend and how much we care about each and every student. No matter what they bring to the table, we meet them where they are and we serve them and get them to the next level. So well done, ladies, and the rest of your team. Well done.
Thank you.
Dr. Redis?
Thank you for including that in the report. I did it because of what you said. It's because the public needs to know we're spending money on things that they think that we shouldn't be spending, but they don't realize how much it costs for a special ed student. So thank you for including that. Great report.
Okay, Dr. Stowe. Very important. I'm sure the community will enjoy it in your zone. Dyslexia, because everybody asks about it. I have one important question to ask you all. How do you all have to fill out the paperwork that Mrs. Angelo Bukwiski was doing? Because is that under the same thing as the therapist and the psychologist? Who's doing that now? Does this affect you all? This is what I'm saying. All of you are dyslexia people. So I guess I'm talking to you, Dr.
You probably
Stowe,
are. I
because
can
they
probably
should-
answer that the best. We have recommended someone for Mrs. Zakreski's position. Actually, I think y'all might have approved it tonight. She starts
It was on, the
Monday.
HR, it's on the HR report.
And that is where we bill Medicaid for our
I know what
services.
it's for. I was just asking.
Oh, I was just going to tell you who was doing it in her absence.
Okay.
So all of my OTs and PTs and speech people stepped in the in between time, so we didn't lose any money. And I should have said that tonight. They did step up and do that job. She was we had about a month while she was gone, and so they stepped up and did that job. But we did hire someone for that
I was
position.
just making sure. I didn't know if they fell into that category where the documentation, Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever, because, I was wondering how the district would fall into a crack paying for some of those services if we didn't have a qualified person in there.
We covered it the whole time with our own therapist to make sure we didn't lose $1 the whole time.
Thank you.
And we have somebody new starting on Monday.
Okay, were there other questions from the board members that you'd like to have? Any more questions? Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Who were the I want to know the two astute people who were, when Miss Dr. Stowe was temporary, and you all just stepped to the plate and helped her facilitate. Who was it, Dr. Stowe? When you took over the student services.
I'll tell you, with all these ladies that are here before you, plus Sharon Hackbart and Tiffany Randall, that's why I mentioned them at the beginning. They have all stepped up and are continuing to step up and run the department.
I know it was two, and I wanted to commend them on what the job that they had done, okay?
Natalie and Sharon and Katina did the SPED part, and these two ladies did the dyslexia part, and Miss Randall stepped up and did the student services portion, so they all had a piece in it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I'd only heard two names, but if you all deserve the
They all
congratulatory
deserve
thing,
to be
I
commended.
want you all to know how very proud I am of you. And answer the phone down there, okay? Have a good day.
And you have a great leader as well.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, ladies. Winding us down, our next is 1.3, our community eligibility provision, which is CEP versus Provision 2 overview. And I'm going to have Miss Mary Lee, and I'm also going to ask Mr. Brown to join you as well, because we are going to talk about finance when he gets a chance. But no strangers, and she's going to give a high-level overview. So our Director of Child Nutrition, Miss Mary Lee Dennis, and then Mr. Brian Brown, our CFO, is here to support. But she's got it.
All right, good evening,
Let's
board
fly.
members, Dr. P, community. My name is Mary Lee Dennis, Child Nutrition Director for the district. I'm here before you this evening to give you an overview of the USDA special provision options that allows and governs our child nutrition programs. So starting out, any district is considered a standard district, which means they hand out meal applications. The child nutrition team goes through those, and they determine eligibility based on free, reduced, and paid. So if a student is free, they receive meals at no charge. If a student is reduced or paid, they pay a copay for the meals. And then USDA offers special provision options so that you can offer meals at no charge to the entire student population. And those are the two that I will go over. I wanted to put a highlight of these two special provision options on the screen. These are the PDF document straight from USDA. The CEP document is 69 pages that govern how you monitor and make sure that you're in compliance when you're operating that. And then the Provision 2 guidance is 58 pages. So it's very in-depth, everything that we have to look at. So any questions? No, I'm just kidding. We'll go back. So CEP, that's currently what we operate under. To be able to offer that, you have to meet minimum qualifications. This special provision specifically looks at ISP students, so identified student population. So our directly certified students, those come straight from the state. They take DHS records, ADE records, mesh them. They provide us a list of directly certified students 4 times a year. The other piece of identified students are homeless students that are identified under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act. Migrant students that are specified under that DESE Act, foster, runaway, and if they're enrolled in a federally funded Head Start program. Each school year we have to elect to do special provision CEP by April 1st of each year, and then we receive reimbursement based on a ISP formula from the state. So a few advantages and disadvantages of doing CEP, which we currently operate under. Again, an advantage is all students eat at no charge. We don't have to distribute and collect meal applications, so that would mean distributing and collecting meal applications on every single enrolled student of the district. Also, e-school coding is very simple. We either code them as a 1 or a 4 under CEP, under their meal status. We're able to forecast the trend. Like I said, we check those and have lists from the state 4 times a year. So we're able to kind of forecast where our trend is going up until April 1st when we have to elect. Also, operating under special provision, all students enrolled have access to other resources. like internet access, the hotspots that Ms. Hale provided to the state a few years ago under the report. They also can take the ACT at no charge, being in a CEP district, and also an advantage is a 4-year cycle. So if we elect, we're locked in for 4 years, no matter how much that data trends up and down, we're locked in. A few disadvantages of operating under CEP: numbers are decreasing nationwide. So not just a state level decreasing, they're decreasing nationwide. And a large part of it is due to post-COVID DHS regulations across the country. So in order to qualify for certain DHS resources, now families aren't qualifying anymore, or they're not following through with being able to qualify. Also, it's not a full capture of the full socioeconomic status of all households. Like I said, CEP only takes a snapshot. So you're either directly certified through DHS in the state, which a lot of that is those government resources, or you're either considered homeless, migrant, foster, or in a Head Start program. So it's just a kind of snapshot of a socioeconomic status of households. Also, under a disadvantage of CEP, like I mentioned a second ago, we are locked in on reimbursement for that identified student population. So it has a district financial impact as well as a child nutrition department impact financially. So kind of just an overview. I don't have to go into this too much. I know you've had them, but this is a look at where we are district-wide CEP, what we're locked in for the next 4 years. So based on our data last year, we are locked in for a 66.54% free claiming percentage, and then you subtract 100, and then you get that paid claiming percentage, which is 33.46. These are the numbers that when Mr. Brown does his reports, I have a slide later on when we look at the other types of district funding strictly pull from this data. So currently, based on, again, that identified student population, we are at 66.54% district-wide. What that means, not getting down into the nitty-gritty a little bit, but our average breakfast service is about 3,300. So if you take that percentage of 66.54, apply that to 3,300, we claim about 2,196 students free, and then 1,104 students paid. And so if you look at that little box in the right-hand corner, that's where our reimbursement comes in from the state. That's directly into our program. So if you look at a free breakfast under the severe need category, we get reimbursed $2.84 for each of those free breakfasts. And then you scroll down under paid, we get 39 cents reimbursed for each paid breakfast. And so when you think about that financially, across the board, we have minimum qualifications components that we have to offer each student every day for breakfast. So when you think about the cost of groceries, so we're having to provide a breakfast across the board that meets standards, but then we may get reimbursed $2.84 for that meal, or we may get 39 cents. So you can see how those percentages, when we're locked in for 4 years, can really, really make an impact on revenue coming in. Same thing with lunch. Average lunch participation around 5,700. If you look over under safety net lunch, we get reimbursed $4.45 for every free lunch that we provide. And then under the paid category, 44 cents. So when you think about when we have to offer 2 ounces of meat, 2 ounces of grain, a whole cup of milk, a whole cup of fruit, and a whole cup of vegetable, how those reimbursement amounts for lunch can be and make an impact. On the flip side of that, here's Provision 2, the other special provision option. Any program that offers breakfast and lunch is eligible. The difference here with Provision 2, it's still in a 4-year cycle, but that first year that it's considered a base year, the district distributes meal applications. So you can begin accepting those meal applications back July 1. You can distribute and collect online and paper applications. They just have to be completed. The federal government requires you to have certain information present on that application. You do make eligibility determinations that are free, reduced, and paid. we receive reimbursement based on that individual student eligibility. So it would no longer be a free or paid percentage. We would receive and do reimbursement based on free, reduced, and paid. We must get families to understand the benefit of completing that meal application. So during that first year, we are collecting meal applications, but the students are still eating at no charge. So that would kind of, that's hard to get people to understand. Why am I filling out a meal application that's asking for financial data when my student is eating a meal at no charge? But so trying to get that message across. And then we just need full administrative support and communication across the district. Again, all students eat at no charge during that entire election period. There's no deadline to elect to provide to go into that special provision 2 option, but in order to be successful in that entire process, we need to elect and approve to begin for marketing purposes. And then another piece of provision 2, when you do distribute and collect meal applications, there is a verification process that occurs from October 1 to November 15th, where we are required to verify 3% of those received applications, and that could change the eligibility status. So again, advantages and disadvantages of this USDA special provision. Advantage, again, all students eat at no charge. It's a 4-year cycle again, but you can extend it an additional 4 years. So technically we could be locked in for this with this option 8 years, as long as there's no major changes. Income population stays the same. We don't add any new schools that would change the makeup of those schools. It's a closer capture of that household socioeconomic status, because we are able to collect financial data on that specific household. And again, those special resources that were available are still available to the students, like the internet access and taking the ACT at no charge. Some disadvantages here. So we must receive a completed meal application on each enrolled student. So again, that's huge, getting them to understand, hey, I need you to fill out this meal application, not for meal purposes per se, but for all of these other resources that could be available to you. Internet, ACT at no charge, etc. There's no ability to forecast numbers with this, unfortunately. It's all determined on a meal application. So we may have an idea where we are, a high or a low socioeconomic status in the community, but we don't and aren't able to forecast how many households are actually going to complete an application, which in turn would create a higher paid and reduced percentage. Also, we got to complete verification. So, just taking 7,000 students enrolled, 3% of that is 210. So 210 applications we are verifying. That means we are required to ask them to submit some type of income verification on that application, which in turn, those percentages of eligibility could change. So based on an application, this student may be free, but they were randomly selected to that we have to verify. Well, when they submit income verification, it may move them to a paid status. So again, a disadvantage there. And also the administrative burden on collecting and distributing meal applications, just the process of that. 7,716 kids, getting applications back on them and determining those and contacting households when they're incomplete to get that completed information. And it's complex eSchool coding. So we're back to individual student eligibility coding in eSchool. So it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4 based on that meal status from the meal application. Some side notes to highlight: our Child Nutrition Department student eligibility numbers percentages sets the district's Title I funding and E-rate funding. So this piece of meal status eligibility is super, super important as we look at financial impact district-wide and for our specific Child Nutrition Department. That's
Mrs. Steele?
Overview.
Good report. Trying to find here, how many percentage of our kids eat breakfast?
So it's about right here we have 3,300.
Yeah,
So, and it fluctuates every month. So we stay around 42 to 45% of our students, and our elementary students, our elementary schools, high breakfast participation. But what kind of brings that number down is secondary. You got
High
students.
school kids, they don't.
Nope, they're getting there right before the bell rings, and they're going straight to class. We've tried to implement at the high school and middle school this year second chance breakfast, so we would bring carts out into the halls, out into the towers, so that in between first and second period, they would have the option to get a breakfast while they're changing classes. But just dynamic and all the factors that are associated with that, we have stopped that just with
You
conversations.
try to be creative. I remember you
Tried.
did the smoothies and things.
I know.
Then it is.
It's, yeah, we're trying.
Student advisory.
Yes,
It's
student
moved too
advisory.
fast. Those kids are moving fast.
Yeah.
Give me an example of an after-school snack.
So an after-school snack, we are only able to do that kindergarten through 12th grade under ADE, and we are required to give 2 components. So when we have meat alternate, grain, fruit, vegetable, milk, we are required to give 2 of those components for an after-school snack. So it may be a turkey roll-up and a juice, or it may be Chex Mix and an apple. So it really just depends based on what the menu is for that day, as long as we're serving a full component of 2 of 5 of those.
Okay, those lunches that are prepared, I say in the high school, that are prepared, and then you have, I guess, what we used to call, Dr. Redis, the snack line. Are those both considered school lunches, or
No.
the snack line is,
They don't have a snack line anymore.
No.
they don't have where you go
So-
get the chips and the
All of
Oh,
that
wow.
went away.
No, never
under
mind.
The, yeah. All of that
was a long
Yeah, it was a long-
Yeah.
That was back in our day.
Yes. Under the Obama administration, it was a push for helping combat childhood obesity, and with that came with the wellness regulations. So, which is why schools have to go through a specific fundraising process now, because any outside food that's not coming from our program has to meet super strict guidelines if it's considered and provided and sold to students during the declared school day. We do sell items still in our cafeteria. They just have to go through this USDA calculator, and it says it's good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we're in the community eligibility provision,
Yes, ma'am.
and where are we in that 4-year cycle?
First year. So we had to re-elect. So prior to this, our claiming percentage was much higher than this. When we were in that previous cycle, it was 2020, 2021. Anyone remember what was going on during 2020? COVID. So a lot of schools shut down in like March 2019. And so when all of that occurred, USDA input all these waivers. One of those was we were able to roll over school year 19-20 data into 2021. And so when that happened, normally when we do determinations, we are able to only have that for 1 year. So when 1920 happened, we were able to roll over all of those numbers of the ISP students, so homeless, migrant, foster, directly certified. We were able to continue having that eligibility status into school year 2021. And then also the DHS regulations to qualify households to receive additional benefits were much lower at that time. So an additional households were qualifying during school year 2021 that normally may have not qualified. And so with those two pieces, the numbers were just so much higher. It wasn't an actual look into what our numbers are currently. And like I said, they're falling nationwide.
So we're in year 1 of a 4-year cycle. Is that correct?
Yes, but we do not have to continue that full 4 years. We are able to switch and pivot to another special provision should the district choose to at any point in time. Just know that if we do that, then we would have to recertify under CEP again.
Okay.
So the numbers that you have here show that our numbers are down for qualifying for CEP.
Yes.
and that trend may continue to go down. So we need to be, I guess you're thinking ahead, trying to decide which way we should go. And thank you for giving us, you've thought this out, the advantages and the disadvantages. So when do you think when will a decision be made, I guess?
So we have those direct certification lists 4 times a year. They come in August, October 1, January, and then April 1. So we're following and watching those numbers each month as we go now. So in January, when we've had 3 direct certified student lists come through, January is going to be a really, really good month to be able to forecast where we're going to be in April. So if the numbers are still down or if they're lower than what we were established in the summer, I'm probably going to start having conversations with Mr. Brown, Dr. Paluski, and say, hey, we may strongly need to think about pivoting to Provision 2 next year, even with all of the disadvantages that are located here. But when you look at those numbers that are continuously trending down and then comparing it to potentially what our numbers could be distributing meal applications, it could be so much higher. But it's going to take a full district, communication from building principals to their households that they serve. It's going to be a huge, push for everyone in the district to understand what and why we're asking households to complete meal applications and just having full support in that process.
Well, thank you for all this information, and obviously you're looking at the data and on top of it. So I'm assuming we'll be revisiting this at some point with you. So thank you.
Ms. West?
Walk me through what does it look like for you to get the information out or distribute it to students or parents to help them, encourage them to fill it out?
I think it could be a flyer. It could go out in the top 5. It could be, we do a great job at marketing on our Facebook page. It could go through the dojo. It could be really all forms.
I'd say any and all forms of
Post it
communication.
at the post office. Distribute that information to churches. Any and all forms would be necessary.
So, is this something that is available? I guess what I'm looking at in my head, what I'm visualizing is like when different schools have like family nights, and this is kind of the problem when you have all of it, like all elementaries on one particular night or all junior highs on one particular night. You can't be every place at one time. But whenever those situations or events occur, then it may be good to maybe have a representative to be there with the paper applications, and then maybe you know, if they have something in the auditorium, you can kind of get that information out to them, because sometimes even if you do put it in a flyer or the top 5, it's going to be somebody that missed it.
Right.
So to try to start capturing that, and then you have, and I understand that I wouldn't want to put all that on you, but you just it may have to be a child nutrition representative at some of these events. Or, for example, there was Fall Fest tonight in Amboy. That would have been a great event to probably have those paper applications there to get that information out. But we just may have to go back to a grassroots type of thing, and then maybe promote your Facebook page on the district's Facebook page. So it's kind of like you got to kind of tell and retell your story.
And then even attending those neighborhood association meetings,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
even the PTA meetings,
Call me,
wherever
okay?
we
I
can
can help you get
get
some information
into, just in front of people, like you said, because not everyone's going to read a flyer, not everyone's going to scan a QR code. So
Right.
actually being able to be in front of them is going to be crucial.
That's important. Thank you.
Thank you for being proactive. Great report. Thank you for the transparency on what this affects, because not only does it affect the free lunches, but it also affects the money that comes in to our school district, and that affects budgeting, and that affects our teachers and our personnel and our students, and so it's a domino effect. So I appreciate your transparency on that. And again, I think our district does a wonderful job on transparency. We have things out there. I apologize, that was my computer. We have things out there on the World Wide Web that some districts do not publish, and it's not that they're hiding it. It's just they don't publish it. They don't speak of it, so to say. And so it speaks to what we are doing, how we are doing things, and we're doing well. So thank you for that.
Dr. Reddy.
A couple of questions. For clarity, provision 2, that's them filling out the applications. That's what that means. If
Yes,
we go
ma'am.
to provision 2, we want them to fill out the applications.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What happens if a parent refuses to submit the documentation?
So they would be placed under that paid category, and so, of course, they may fall under a free or reduced category, but if they don't and decide not to complete an application at all, they would be under the paid category, and then which would not be counted towards any type of funding as far as it goes for Title I or E-rate or our reimbursement. So it would basically be a hit against all of those things.
So does that mean we would go back to where some students would have to pay for their lunch?
No, so even if we elect to go provision 2 during that first full year, even though we're collecting meal applications, we still offer meals at no charge. And so at no point during that process would we have to charge households for that, depending on what their status is at all.
But eventually,
The only way is if we elected and approved to go back to a standard system. And so that would be the only way that we would have to distribute meal applications and then charge households for that, is if we didn't do any type of special provision at all.
okay. And lastly, is there any assistance for parents that don't know how to complete the application?
There would be instructions, or they could always contact the office or come down to our office. We have a resource center set up at our child nutrition office that has 3 laptops there, and we always have staff in our building that could assist them.
I just put that plug out because if we're going to advertise for them to fill out the application, also include a way out for if they can't fill the application out on their own.
Sure.
So they know that there's that
Sure.
that option. And then I just want to say thank you for showing up for every luncheon. They've been wonderful. When Mr. Steele was talking about the high school in the back in our day when you had the paid line or whatever. When I was at the high school this last time, the only downfall that I saw was too many choices and not enough time to be able to go through all the lines. So a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And the food is good.
Okay, congratulations, young lady. You're on the farmers thing. I read your article about you.
Yes,
Would you
ma'am.
tell us what you got?
So I was one of 14 candidates for the entire state of Arkansas that was selected to be a Farm to School Institute coach, and that was based on just everything that we have implemented here at the district. So very grateful to represent the district and be able to coach another school who is trying to increase their farm to school efforts, because agriculture in Arkansas is so huge, and the opportunities that it can bring to students is so invaluable and so important. So I'm just glad to be a part of it.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
You're doing an awesome job.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good job, Mary.
I had 3 things. Mr. Brown, when he had given us board members a workshop, I don't know how many of you remembered it, but if we only have 3,247 students having lunch, we have an enrollment of 7,807. How much money have we lost, Mr. Brown?
Well, are you referring to
Funding? You know
the
that you
funding?
explained to
No,
us?
in our budgeting workshop, we talked about loss of funding
Right.
in ESA. It's not actually tied to the participation in her program, but it's tied to the certification number. So the 66% she's talking about that actually dropped below 70 because of the DHS changes in how families qualify for those services. So less students and families qualifying for services under DHS, the smaller the number that is identified in our program. And when that number drops below 70, so does our the amount of money in Title I, because Title I schools are tied to poverty. It also affects our ESA funding because there's 3 levels of funding in ESA. We were at the middle level, the 70% funding. Next year we're going to be at the lower percentage funding because we dropped below 70%. So that's going to cost us next year, we already know, $1 million in
Right.
ESA funding. So unless we can change the trajectory of our CEP certification and recertify, or whether we go Provision 2 or standard, we've got to look at all facets to see which way is going to get us, in what way can we get back to that 70% certification level in order to regain. So if we're below it for 1 year, we just lose that funding for 1 year. If we are below it for 2 years, we will lose $1 million next year and $1 million the next year. So it'd be $2 million, and then it takes you 2 years to back out of the program. So there's a lot at stake here with this program, and I applaud Ms. Dennis for being proactive in monitoring the numbers and keeping abreast of that. But we've got a decision to make at some point whether we're going to recertify with CEP with new numbers that will requalify us or go Provision 2 or standard.
Okay. You heard board members speaking. Some of them had these glorious ideas, or perhaps our only biggest problem is like high school. They do not want to be affiliated with it. And maybe, Ms. Daniels, sometime you can, we'll spend that time having an input with you. I do remember how we used to do it to keep our numbers up. And that is not a conversation to be had at this time. That is information maybe on a future workshop. But I did hear a lot of great ideas. But I do know how we used to do it, and it was very, very successful. You have to take a certain amount of your administrators. But anyway, thank you for a glorious report. And when you decide to have your little workshop to see how we can help bring those numbers up so we won't lose money, okay? I'd be certainly appreciative. Did any of you other board members have anything to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. I
Good
mean,
job,
we're
Ms.
here.
Dennis.
We're here to help. So if you want to bounce off ideas, I mean, that's in
Thank
part.
you.
I said
Thank
we'd
you.
have a workshop
Yeah.
if you're interested, okay?
Of course.
Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
this is
Thank
not
you for the
our time.
opportunity.
You have did a very marvelous job for us,
Thank
okay?
you. Thank
She
you.
And
is.
thank you. You
Appreciate it.
excused, and Mr. Brown is up next. Dr. Paluski, I heard him say.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis, for your leadership, and again, congratulations. Members of our Board of Education, this is going to be brief, but we did want to put this on as information item 1.4. We did want to provide you with an update as it relates to our capital improvement project, as well as our millage. And I do want to thank everyone in our community that did support the millage. I do believe those numbers were around 7,580 that did support the millage, although it did not pass. What we want to talk about briefly with you is to give you an update on what our next steps are in order to move forward, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Brown. We immediately, I'll just cut to the chase, want to apply for an extension so we can go after another millage again, but I'll turn that over to Mr. Brown.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Paluski, and
Yes,
members
sir.
of the board. What you have in front of you is just a one-page summary of the next steps to pursue a second millage attempt. So our first step was, after this election, was to notify the Arkansas Division of Public School Academic Facilities and Transportation of the failed millage attempt. And then we had to request a waiver as you recall, our construction commencement deadline. That's what they call it. But that was the time where we had to sign a contract with construction. That deadline was set at January 20th, 2025. Well, without a commitment on millage, we can't meet that deadline. So the day after, yesterday, I met with Dr. Paluski. I called Mr. Tessman, our facilities coordinator. I called the facilities division, got what was required. We drafted the letter that's attached to this. That's the second and third page of this. So that's just a copy of the letter that we have filed with the facilities division that basically says we have 3 priorities that we're working on. The first is the demolition of the middle school and addition. Even though it's a new construction, that's the way facilities classifies it. So it's a demolition and addition at the middle school. That was to be funded with partnership, millage, and district building funds. Then we had priority 2, which was the renovation of Old Main. That was to be funded with millage and district building funds. As you recall, we don't have partnership money for Old Main. And then the priority 3 is construction of a new indoor athletic and activity center. That was with millage funds and district building funds. No project partnership money on that as well. So the only item we're applying through the facilities division is for an extension of that construction commencement deadline, and we're going to ask that they extend that for a period of 12 months. So on the third page of that, you'll see that we've asked for the new deadline to be established as January 20th, 2026. I spoke with Director Kane today via email and asked him when could we expect a decision on that extension, and he said by the end of the month we should be able, they should be able to communicate to us whether that's approved or not. I don't anticipate any problem with that extension in times where school districts have had a millage attempt and it didn't pass and you have a second millage attempt. The commission has, to my knowledge, always approved an extension to allow for that second attempt. It's where a millage is required and school districts don't actually follow through and ask for the millage, and then if they come back and ask for an extension when they hadn't asked for the millage, they don't approve those extensions. But we've done what we were supposed to do, so I have no, I don't have any problems thinking that we're going to get our waiver approved. But I can't speak for the commission either, so just with that being said. The second item there is we have to schedule a meeting. The Arkansas law requires if you have a partnership funded application before ADE, which we do, the middle school 20.8 million, and you have a failed millage attempt, you have to meet with the Division of Public School Facilities and Transportation, and you have to outline to them what your plans are. You have to go to a physical meeting with them. We have that meeting scheduled. I scheduled that today, December 2nd. Actually, Ms. Colquitt, I think, got it scheduled on there. December 2nd, 11:30. That'll be Dr. Paluski, myself, and Mr. Tessman, our facilities coordinator. I've talked with him. He's agreed to attend that meeting with us. Basically, what we're going to do there is to say we're still interested in our partnership funding, which is what this letter says. We're also going to tell them that we are interested in having a second millage attempt and that we're still interested in pursuing our partnership project. And then the third item is on or before, this one involves the board, on or before February 20th, your regular board meeting in February. So at that meeting or before, you would need to vote to have a second millage election campaign. And Mr. Beardsley's going to be here in December, and he will talk to you about those options. But he'll walk you through that just like he did before when we had that first millage. He'll have the election documents that you would need to approve. And once you approve those, then we would schedule the election for May 2025. And that's all I have at this point. If you have any
Okay.
questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
With the board's approval, we're gonna do properly protocols. You've heard the recommendation from the superintendent. And it's the board as protocol to decide if you want to continue. So at this time, if you can put it to a motion to accept
No, there's,
It's because it's a workshop, so there's no.
Yeah,
of
this
this
is,
information, but
yes,
what I'm
just
saying.
information.
you are
Okay.
correct, Ms. Williams, that we're gonna take the next step. We're gonna go and if we can get the waiver, then we will have to come back to the board and
Yes.
the board will vote. Our recommendation is that we want to have this meeting as soon as possible, get the waiver so we can come back to the board as fast as we can,
Right.
hopefully in December. Then you would vote to say, well, really, we have the option of May or November, but our recommendation would be May.
Yes.
And the sooner we can get that recommendation, then the sooner we can go to work on the next extension of
Okay.
our.
Right, so no vote needed tonight.
No
It's
vote.
just, this is just information since
Okay.
this happened
I
on
just
Tuesday.
wanted to make sure
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know what I mean. If
Yes,
something
ma'am.
needed to be done, because I'm looking at these numbers and these dates, and they're saying 25, and this is 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That being said, my only suggestion, I'm only one voice of 7. My only suggestion is that we don't wait until February 20th.
Correct.
That we do the vote
Yes.
Sure.
way as soon as
This-
possible, so that we have more time
That's right.
for advertising
Yes.
versus this first time around.
Yes.
If the sooner we can get it on here, so
You
we
got
can
it.
vote,
That's
we
our
can
goal.
hit the ball
Yes.
rolling.
I
That's-
agree.
And let's
I
You got
agree.
it.
That's our
Okay,
goal.
That can be,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Paluska will remember to put it on the agenda, that
Yes.
we can
As soon as
move
possible.
forward.
As soon as we get it, we will bring it to you for a vote. Yes, ma'am? Okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the update. Madam Chair, Madam President?
Okay,
That's it.
could we have a,
There's,
This is
it's
a-
a workshop.
It's a workshop,
It's a
so we
workshop.
out
So
here.
we are,
Go.
we're done. Good night.
good night,